Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker of this morning, a great friend, an outstanding researcher and educator, and a great leader in gift education in South America. Dr. Sheyla Blumen is a psychologist, full professor in the Department of Psychology at Catholic University of Peru, and editor-in-chief of the Peruvian journal Revista de Psicologia. As CEO of Mente Futura Foundation, she promotes talent development toward excellence and ethnic, linguistic diverse and multicultural young scholars. She was also instrumental in the launching of the Peruvian law supporting the high achievers. In 2011, Dr. Blumen received the Eisenhower Fellowship. She has published hundreds of books, chapters, and articles in the fields of talent development and educational psychology. Thank you to the Jody Mahoney Center for Gift Education at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock for sponsoring Dr. Blumen's keynote entitled Culture and High Performance, Inclusive or Exclusive Practices. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sheyla Blumen to the stage.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sheyla Blumen. As Denise has just said, I'm professor at the Catholic University, both in psychology and education, and director of Future Minds Gifted Center. I'm honored with invitation from the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children, as well as my appreciation to Dr. Ann Robinson and the Jody Mahoney Center of University of Arkansas at Little Rock for the privilege to be here. First, we will discuss ethno-linguistic diverse contexts, whether they can be considered a wonderful gift or a significant challenge. Then we will go through the regulations for gifted education in Latin American countries. We will discuss about so-called inclusive and exclusive provisions in terms of culture and social support. Also, we will talk about culturally sensitive intervention programs for young scholars in the Andean countries, and of course about the challenges for the future. There are many challenges gifted students from underserved populations in the Americas face in being identified and served, particularly those students belonging to ethno-linguistic minorities and living in poverty, who are often overlooked for gifted programs in countries placed in the highlands of the Andean mountains and, of course, in the Amazon rainforest. The geographical challenges, which are very beautiful to be touristed, but difficult to be attended, prevent the provision of regular services for faraway communities. However, quoting the GKNB initiative of the NAGC, giftedness knows no boundaries, and it is our duty as teachers, counselors, practitioners, parents, and academics to face these challenges with responsibility, following what the scientific literature teaches us about it. For these purposes, we will start with the most ecological, diverse country in the world. Of course, it is Peru. Placed in the western part of South America, can you find gifted children in Peru? That was a question somebody asked me like 30 years ago when I went to Radboud University. Now it's Radboud University, asking me what I was doing there, if there were gifted children in Peru. Of course we can. Included among them are the indigenous descendants from Indian natives, Spanish conquerors of the Americas, as well as African slaves, Chinese, Japanese, Italian, Turkish, English, Polish, Romanian, and Hungarian descendants. However, the lack of access to adequate schooling often prevents them from meeting their cognitive and academic needs, thus becoming underrepresented when compared to other Western countries or other Western influence with the children around the world. Let's figure out around what the context looks like. Yes, those are potatoes. can you tell me, just to warm up the audience, I know this is kind of early in the morning, although my classes at the university start at 7 o'clock in Lima. So, can you tell me how many varieties of potatoes are there in Peru? Who can tell? 300, okay. Sorry? 20, 300, 1,000. I'll give a llama to the one who reaches this. I have my llamas there. Small ones. Who gives more? 4,000? No, that's far away. No, too much. 1,000? 1,500? Okay. Nobody else? Come on, you can do it. 17. We're already in 1,500. Sorry? 1,700? Who gives more? Nobody? Come on. Okay, 2,340. She's close to the number. Okay, I think the llama will go to you. It's more than 2,500, actually. Okay, just to figure out, how a country can have that many different kind of, in this case, potatoes. Okay? And do you know how many native languages are spoken in Peru? 1,500? No. A few hundred. No, not that much. Native languages. Sorry? 53. Close. Another llama will go to. You remember who you are. Not before the llamas later. Okay. 53. How many did you say? 53. 75. 76. 80? No, that's too much. The 80 girl, okay. Who's the 80 girl? Very good. It's 84, actually. Okay? And how many ecosystems are there in Peru? Ecosystems. Ecosystems. 12. Just to let you know, there are 103 existing ecosystems in the world. Okay? So, how many are there in Peru? 36, 6, no, 6 is too small. 36, who gives more?
84.
Yeah, you know it. Very good. Okay. Okay, we know that everybody's awaking now. Okay. 84, very good. So we have 3 llamas to give you later. Very good. It's 84. Yeah, it's 80% of the 103 existing ecosystems on the earth. Just to let you know, when the Spanish conquerors arrived to Peru, they thought there were just 3 different natural areas, because they thought one was the coastal area, the other one was the mountains, Andean mountains, and also the Amazon jungle. But then a Peruvian researcher found out 10 different climates, depending also on the altitude. But now that, of course, research has been going on, they have found 84 ecosystems. So this is wonderful. You can go there for hiking, you can go there for touristing and taking very nice pictures. But yes, we also have huge multicultural diversity in Peru. And the problem with this, although it's wonderful, is that most of the different languages are spoken on the Amazon region, as you can see, and some of them also in the Andean region. If we consider that Peru is a highly centralized country, in Lima City we have 10 million inhabitants out of the 32 million that we have in Peru. About 1/3 of the population is concentrated in just one city. And the huge problem there is that most of the, directions, laws, and initiatives for the whole country are taken here. It is a highly centralized country. So the problem with this is that many people that live in Lima do not have any idea about what's going on in the rest of the country. That happens when you have a highly centralized country. So yes, we can talk about gifted children in Lima, of course. We have many international schools. We have international baccalaureate organizations going on in the schools in Lima. But what about the rest of the country? You see? Also in Peru, we have a lot of global problems going on there. From all the main global problems, let's say, of the world, Peru faces those related to climate change. People said that in 2030 there were going to be huge difficulties in water services, particularly in the coastal area. Then we also have water and food provisions difficulties in the general country. The demographics tendencies are going up and not down. And I remember I used to welcome some international students from Europe. We have alliances with European universities. And I remember that particularly the girls coming to Peru are always surprised to see how many teenagers are pregnant, walking in the streets. And many of them, of course, these students are around their 20s, 20 to 25 more or less. And they always tell me, like, what's going on in this country, I mean, don't you have birth control or something like that? Where there are so many young ladies pregnant walking in the streets. We also have problems with transnational crimes and, of course, with poverty and external debt, okay? So, with this situation and with this context, we have to deal also with communication difficulties. If you consider that we have so many native languages spoken, not everybody has Spanish as their native language, right? Therefore, there are communication difficulties. Also, national identity has to be strengthened. Health and well-being, we have in the last year indexes, our levels of well-being as a country are pretty low. And also violence, domestic violence is an issue in my country. And of course, we have to focus on trauma and gender studies as well. So this configured a highly fragmented region, not just depending on social and cultural differences, but also ethnic, linguistic, economic, geographical, gender, etc. So what works? How can we focus on gifted education? How can we develop gifted education in such a context? We know that there are 4 main issues we have to focus on. One is advocacy strategy, the other one is research and training. We need scientific basis if we want to convince policymakers that something has to be done in the country. Those of you that have experience with policymakers and secretaries of education, numbers lead the decision, right? And in gifted education, the numbers are not so high compared to the other needs. Nowadays, actually last week, we were dealing in our Secretary of Education because they want to move the budget for gifted education towards rural education. Of course, rural education is very important, but why taking the budget from something that is really working towards something that is not working because of the difficulty and the complexity, for not saying the corruption, that is involved with that area. You see, because with faraway communities, it's very, very, very difficult to control the cold system. And Now I'm going to explain about our gifted program, but yes, it is working and very good. Okay, intervention programs and teacher training programs are also important. But first, let's go back to the regulations for gifted education in Latin American countries. Here, I tried to do something like a stoplight table in which we first wanted to do research in terms of like asking with surveys to the teachers all around Latin America about what their expectations were about gifted education, as well as their mostly their expectations and their social representation. But not every Secretary of Education in the other countries really wanted to support such a survey, so we couldn't get all the information we wanted. So what we did was Google, and focus on the public information that is already there. If somebody is interested in that, I have all the references as well. And how the other countries in Latin America are dealing with this. What we found is that most of the countries allow enrichment programs. I mean, there are laws on education. They have even some particular articles related to the need to do intervention programs with gifted education, and they were mostly related to enrichment. Okay, enrichment in the regular classroom or enrichment after school, or even Saturday programs or so. Some countries did not have this as explicit as others, like in Honduras or Nicaragua or Panama, which are just starting their programs. But in terms of acceleration, the problems arises. Some of their laws are not explicit in relation to acceleration. Some countries, yes, they do allow acceleration, like Argentina, Bolivia, Colombia, Chile, Ecuador, and Mexico. But the only country in which acceleration is completely banned is my country by now. And this is terrible. Because 20 years ago, we were the only country that allowed acceleration. You see how political things can influence the development of programs and intervention programs and provisions for gifted education. And this was completely a political issue, nothing to do with education. You see? However, this is ruling the provisions. Therefore, it's impossible. Why? Because they put as the most important condition for educational placement, chronological age. So chronological age is what is determining if a student is going to be placed in a certain grade. And the headmasters of the school, because of course we have been talking to them, and so are very frightened because they are fine if they allow acceleration in their schools. So not even they can change this or going to the other side, etc. This is completely banned. And this is more related to, how can I tell this? To political issues related to how to keep teachers without going on strike. Okay? Because they're using inclusive and exclusive terms in order to relate towards the provisions that should be given to certain students. So they're more focusing on rural education, which is important, of course, and the so-called special learning services, which are not intended at all, but they are talking about serving them in the inclusive practices. Some studies we did about social representations on the high performance by teachers, we found that there are still issues related to physical appearance, which is awful. I mean, this information was found in the Europe of 3 centuries ago, more or less, in the 18th centuries or 17th centuries, maybe in Europe. Okay, so we're more than 300 years behind. So this could be fixed with good teacher training programs and good teacher formation programs. And this is worsened in the rural areas. I mean, teachers working on rural areas are completely against gifted any provisions for the high performance. Why? Because there is, I think, how can I say this? I mean, they are more focused on the collectivistic, I mean, from the cultural literature, we can find the differences between more individually oriented societies and, collectivistic societies. So, politicians are related, collectivistic traits related to the provisions that could be given to the high performers. And the high performers are now seen as something negative towards the society. Some like a disloyal thing, okay? And this is very bad because they are preventing good initiatives for gifted education. And this is why, of course, now they want the budget to be given to rural education. I mean, fits perfectly well, you see, in the situation, but nothing to do with what the scientific literature tells us about gifted education. So, going back to what works, in terms of advocacy strategies, I would like to share with you the metaphor Don Ambrose uses in order to call of attention about the need to provide gifted education for our societies to be able to take advantage of the macro opportunities of the 21st century globalization wave and not think on the macro problems it involves. The only way is shortening the creative intelligence gap through gifted education. This metaphor is really helping at least myself when I have to go and talk and convince the people from the Secretary of Education that gifted education is needed. As I've told you, last week we have what they call a round table about how to, improve the services towards gifted education. When I arrived to the place, to the Minister of Education, the Vice Minister was there. I felt very important. Former Ministers of Education were there as well. And it was also the Minister of Education that happened to be the first headmaster of our School for the Gifted. As soon as I arrived, she told me, Sheyla, we need to talk. I said, what's going on here? And she told me they want to, this budget thing, to change the budget. So we have to be very strong on this. And there were also all the other people representing international cooperation from the World Bank, from all the international collaboration agencies that we have in Peru, etc. And the main issue was, is it important to have a gifted education program in Peru or not? Or maybe we can improve the rural education. So it was very difficult, and of course I used this wave to convince people that this was needed, and I also used, Gagné model, right, François Gagné. And the most interesting thing was that, of course, I knew many of my colleagues were there, the colleagues that are working in developmental psychology and so, and the first thing I said was, I'm Sheyla Blumen, I'm a strong supporter of gifted education. Okay, so this is me, this is my sword. And when I showed them the model, Gagné's model, many of them told me, oh, this is interesting. We're finding out that there is a different Gagné I mean, a different Gagné from the one we already know, you know? The other Gagné that is more related to educational practices and so. And I was telling them, you know what? The problem is that we don't know what is being doing in scientific terms in gifted education. So we're more focused on political issues and not really in what really, and what is important for gifted education and for our children as well. Who is going to build up the bridges that are not going to fall down? Who's going to take care of our patients in the health services? I mean, we do need people that are going to lead the country positively, not just negatively, right? So, in Peru, this is the main problem now, because it's not a problem, of course. Those are what so-called cores. They are residential schools that provide housing facilities, social assistance, nutrition, meals, laundry services, as well as psychological counseling. Indeed, this direction, the psychological counseling, is very strong. It's a 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week service. Why? Because there are the provisions for nationwide academically high-performance students coming from underprivileged, highly vulnerable socioeconomic conditions. So the first one was developed in Lima on 2010. I remember I was visiting Radboud University and Liane Hohefen told me, oh, you know they're launching the school? I said, really? No. Yes? And I'm here. Oh my gosh. Okay. So she knew about it. I didn't know because they were all, you know, political things. From then on the subsequent administration, and we are now 4 different governments from different administrations since then, there are now more cores have been developed, you know, by 2015, and now last year, 2018, we reached 25 cores nationwide. They're all around the country, and they are becoming like the leading schools for public education in their area. They're very well seen, that this is very important. One of the things we told them last week is that these schools were really appreciated by all the communities nationwide. So if you put them down, you are going to have a strike, you see? Not just with the teachers, but also with the parents. And of course, you know, administrators always fear about that, so they didn't do anything. But the other important thing is that they put a second meeting for today. And I told them, I'm not going to be in Peru today. And so I had to, you know what networking is? Of course you know. And I had to start sending emails to everybody last night in order for everybody to tell, please change the date. You see how things are sometimes going this way. Well, so always like that. Well, there are some nice pictures of some cores placed in the Andean highlight. This is in Puno, close to the Titicaca Lake. Very nice site, and well, those are the students there. From the course experience, underprivileged gifted students should be sensitive towards cultural differences, and this was one of the main difficulties teachers and counselors had at the course, because of course they were having children coming all around nationwide, right? And for many of them, it was the first time that children coming from the Amazon region were in the same place as children from the Andean region and children coming from the coastal region as well. So that was a very different experience. They were all Peruvians, but they didn't, they have to go through an adaptation process to learn to understand each other and to live respecting each other as well. We learned that everybody should have the opportunity to work also on cultural, diverse, collaborative groups. They need to develop adaptation towards cultural differences, and of course, a sensitiveness towards justice and equity issues, because some of them, I mean, talking about a country that has very high rates of violence, domestic violence, some violent behaviors were normalized, were seen as normal. So counselors had to deeply work on this through the adaptation process. So the first year, this course services just 9, 10, and 11th graders. The school system in Peru is up to 11th grade, not to 12, just 11. So these courses are for 3 last grades of schooling system. So the 9th grade is the adaptation year, actually. And here, I would like to call for the within 2008 standards for cultural competence that fit very good in our underprivileged gifted students, at least on what we found. It is recommended them to develop responsible engagement in the cultural heritage of their community. Success throughout life should be built on the knowledge and skills of the local cultural community. Active participation in cultural environments is suggested. And here I would like to stop a little bit, because just to let you know that, of course, many of our students from the course go abroad for college studies, but all of them are coming back to the country. I remember Rina told me like 3 years ago, I think, in a conference, how is this happening? Because which are our expectations about a gifted student coming from a South American poor country to European universities or North American universities to stay there, right? But most of them are coming back. And this is very important because they are empowered and very advocate towards working for their own communities. And many of them go back to their communities. And now they are the mayors of their communities because, of course, they are the best educated people in their communities as well, okay? Well, effective engagement in learning activities should be based on traditional ways of knowing and learning, and they should be aware of and appreciate the relationships and processes of interaction of all elements in the world around them, and this is something being done. In general terms, advocacy strategies might consider, at least in developing country, an umbrella of possibilities involving not just administration, because administration come and go, right? But the public school system, international cooperation, as well as peer mentoring. And the problem, I mean, it's not a problem, but could be a problem with the international cooperation, is that most of the lines of work and collaboration are given in Washington, D.C. You see, not in the countries they are supporting. So, although we know we have to go to Washington to convince people that, please, the money you're giving to my country, direct it or redirect it to certain services, a positive thing is that a former Minister of Education of my country is now leading the education area of the World Bank. And he was supportive towards gifted education. So if they couldn't change yet the budget towards rural schools, it's because he is there. You know how network works, sometimes at least, you see? So, now in relation to research and training, hereby we can see the results of a study that explores the relationship between academic resilience, achievement goals, and implicit theories of intelligence in a senior class of the Peruvian Academy of High Achievers, the cohorts. And results revealed that the mastery approach goal became a mediating variable between the incremental theory of intelligence and academic resilience. Sorry, it's in Spanish. Okay. Yeah, I didn't have time, sorry. I got a cold and fever, so no. Not accustomed to air conditioning. Well, but this is an ongoing research. We started with the core schools, and we have just collected data from regular schools as well. And the situation is more or less showing the same results. The next study follows a comparative study of creative performance and the classroom climate for creativity in high school students of Amazon rural and urban state-funded public schools in Peru from this area. You see, close to the Amazon, where the Andean mountains meet the jungle, the Amazon jungle, and results were discussed in relation to the challenges for high performers in collectivistic contexts, such as the Amazon region. One important thing from this region is that last year they have just won the chocolate contest, international contest. So, sorry I didn't bring some chocolate, but the chocolate from this area is considered the best chocolate in the world. They were awarded last year this special prize, and the coffee, organic coffee, comes from this place, close to the Titicaca Lake as well. Not the Titicaca Lake, but the Puno. It's more close to the Amazon because cacao is more in the Amazon area. Okay? So, but the interesting thing here are that the relations were significant, although not so strong. We also consider peer mentoring and international interchange of students and researchers as key activities for fostering the needs of our young scholars. And here we can see some of our international students. We, of course, invite your international students to join us as well. We can do some collaborative interchange. And we have from Brazil, we have from the Netherlands mostly, and of course from the South American region. And in terms of intervention programs, any program that aims to support the underprivileged gifted should consider not just covering their college studies, that is how most programs support young scholars, but also monitoring them to prevent dropping out from college. Dropping out from college and the regular fellowship provisions is very high. It's about 15%. That's a lot. I mean, 15% of the students who get fellowships or any kind of grants for continuing college studies just drop out their college. So that's very bad because they don't have the means to continue regular, college studies otherwise than having some support. So if they cannot handle the pressure it involves or the conditions it involves also because it's mainly going to an urban area, then that money is also lost. And those who make decisions about where the money goes, of course they would say, why are we going to give them some support if they're not using it properly? You see? So for us, it's not just the financing thing to do from scholarships or loans, but also the tutoring service, monitoring them through what we call the talent development monitoring service in order to support them towards their college studies. The big discussion here, and indeed it was a very significant discussion, was in relation to, okay, but if those young scholars are so good or so bright, why do they need to be monitored? Why do they need some tutoring service? Because we have to consider also the cultural context. It's not the same to live in a city and let's say go abroad to another city. For instance, I had the privilege to do my PhD in the Netherlands. I lived in Lima. From Lima, urban area, I have to go to the Netherlands to an urban area, although it was Nijmegen, not Amsterdam, but still what we know as urban area. right? So my main issue was learning Dutch, which I did not, but talking in English as a second language, okay? But culturally, I mean, our customs were similar, right? I mean, I knew what to expect, they knew what to expect from me, so we were culturally more or less in the same conditions. It is not the same to live in the Amazon area and move to Lima, although it's the same country. Many of the Amazon students do not have Spanish as their first, as their native language. You see? So they're learning Spanish and using Spanish as a native language, and for years they thought, indigenous people or people coming from ethno-linguistic diverse contexts were kind of ashamed of their origins. And that's a shame, you see? It's a shame to feel ashamed of that, you see? Because you have to be proud of who you are in order to consolidate a strong identity for yourself, and therefore you will feel empowered to deal with whatever situation it will become. And this is something that is being empowered in these high schools, in this course, okay? And respect your own identity. You see, because this is very, very important, particularly if you consider that my country has been, for years, when the Spanish conquerors arrived to Peru, we were a conquered country. So that the way of seeing people coming from Europe particularly, or from more developed countries, is different. Many tourists said, oh, Peruvian people are so welcoming. Yes, because you always feel that the others are better than you see, which is not something happening in other countries, you see? So those things are very important to consider in terms of how to deal with the students. Therefore, when these students come to our universities, which are based in Lima, most of them, or other cities in Peru, still urban areas, they need a tutoring service. The problem with this is that tutoring is expensive. You have to pay the counselors, right? You have to organize a group of people supporting the students. Peer mentoring is not enough. Peer mentoring is mainly done by volunteers, but it's not enough. You also need specialists to help them deal with the everyday situations. If you consider that, at least in Peru, it is not common to go out from your house when you're 18, as it is expected in other developed countries. Children are not being raised up for going away or for going out of their house when they are become 18. You see? So this preparation that is already taking place in secondary education is not being considered in parenting practices. So there are many things that has to be considered in terms of how to support these students coming out of their houses, out of their families, right? And having to be established in a city they don't know, at least they found it very aggressive, right? Because always living in rural areas, the rhythm of the living is different than in a city that everything has to be done for yesterday, right? You know what I mean, right? Everything has to be done, right? And for just in a minute or for yesterday, yes. And the other thing is the mentoring for job placement. I know there are many different mentoring programs, but in developing countries where we say in Spanish, the ninis, because ni estudia ni trabaja, which means that they don't study, neither work. We have a lot of young population that finish school. School is finished around 17 years, more or less, still minors, 17, 18, let's say. And from 18 to 25, if they don't go to college education or to some type of, let's say, institute to be trained in something, they would not be able to find out a job. So we have, and it is like 40% of our young population which are the ninis. They neither study, neither work. So that is also the other thing. Therefore, if we want to have a successful Young Scholars Program, we need some mentoring provisions for job placement as well. And this is not just to have alliances with some enterprises, but to encourage them, to provide them the skills needed in order to be able to cope with a job interview, or to plan ahead about how to deal with, the process of looking for a job, right? And this is very, very needed. So it's not just, as you can see, the financial part. Of course, it is very important. But the banks, the foundations, or the international organizations that provide financing, they also want to see results. And if we have more than 50% of dropping out, they will not see the results, right? Therefore, they would stop financing. And indeed, every year this is an issue, right? Shall we finance the young scholars or not? Should we increase the number of, scholarships or reduce them? Are we able to find young scholars nationwide in Peru? Last year, I would not like to use the word fight, but it was a fight. I was external consultant of a foundation that the owner of the foundation, the big boss, wanted to provide fellowships and scholarships for the students, but their managers, his managers didn't want to, because they wanted to relocate the budget somewhere else. And they were providing like 50 scholarships per year, which is not that much. And the big boss wanted to improve it towards 100 or 150. And the CEO at that moment agreed with that. But the CEO changed. And it is really terrible when the decisions have to be done by one person. Because then you have to convince that one person that this is a need. You see, and that person was more focused on some ICT things to check. Well, of course, ICT is important, but not to be given the money of the scholarships. So they now reduce it to 50. You see, and they took as they were based on, we have 15% of desertion, so this is not really worthwhile, so no, 50 is okay, we can deal with that. And the other thing, again, talking about numbers, is how much would be given towards the tutoring program and the mentoring program and the job placement, so too much money. You see, and we need these three things. It's not just the financial thing. So, well, we are still there. But we also have good news. This is Maday Urteaga. This is just a successful example that this functions. She was a former student from Core Lima. She was the best student of her class. And she's a license in political science and government. Actually, when she entered core, in the interview, she said she wanted to become the first president, female president of Peru, and she's on her way of doing that if things go well. But now I interviewed her like 2 months ago, more or less, and she told me, I don't want to be involved in politics, no way. After all the things that are going on in South America. But she was accepted with full fellowship to pursue PhD studies in all these 6 universities. And, you know, they're important universities in this country, and I think she's going to Princeton because her promoter was trained there. And everybody says, yeah, that's a non-biased decision, but everybody thinks it's a very biased decision, actually. But that's great, you know? She has this opportunity, and she is coming from the northern Andean region of Peru. And the interesting thing is that she left home when she was 15 for attending core. So she was a 15-year-older that had to convince her parents that pursuing better education was important for her and for her family. And for the parents, it was very, very difficult. You know, having her a minor, a woman from the Andean region, where gender issues are pretty difficult, okay, to go to Lima by herself, continue her studies there, and then going to my university. That means remaining in the city. And you know what the family were telling her, kept on telling her every day that they were calling her, or every week? Please don't forget to eat our food. You see? Because, you know, we're a gastronomic paradise, of course, and each region has a particular food. And for the parents, eating the food she was accustomed to do while, you know, in the family was very important. It was part of her identity. Don't eat those fast food that places that you will find in Lima, or the Lima food, eat our food. And it's very interesting because I monitor some of the young scholars in my university, and the parents keep on sending them their food as a way of having this connection with her, you know, original town and society. And that's very interesting indeed. Okay, I'm kind of running out of time. Yeah, 5 minutes. In terms of teacher training programs, well, you know, training teachers is very important. I don't need to tell you that. And empowering the teaching career, actually, in my country is of high importance, and providing those involved in teaching practice a clear career path. Nowadays, in Peru, teaching career is being, how do you say, formalized towards college studies, because it used to be a career that was learned on institutes. Therefore, after the former strike, teacher strike, they chose to change it for providing teachers a clear way to have access to bachelor degree, then a master's degree, and then PhD studies. And the most dramatic thing is that nobody cares about that before. I mean, had to be a strike, of course, because of asking better salaries, in order to realize that teachers, the teaching career was placed in an institute, you know, and not as a professional career. So nowadays, this is changing, and teacher education is being placed in universities, and also is having a different perspective. And it's very interesting because many teachers are pursuing a master's degree now, and some of them are even interested in gifted education, which is great, right? Okay, I think, yeah, okay, Denise is looking at me with this face. So I think I better finish. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your attention and being here early today.
Thank you, Sheyla, for this inspired lecture. Sheyla is also inspiration for researchers in Latin America countries, developing countries. I'm sure your work has made change in in the lives of different people, different students in Peruvian context. Thank you very much.